Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer SS&C Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, or best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to see how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Marchuk. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. In this episode, I'll be chatting with Adam Helfgott, a serial entrepreneur with a proven track record of building breakout tech companies, most notably achieving unicorn status with his ad tech venture, MadHive. He's also the co-founder of Valence, a strategy firm that's supporting organizations' transition to Web3 and the new ways of interacting with customers, protecting your identity and exchanging value. Adam is passionate about channeling blockchain's potential to solve real-world problems, not just speculative investments. He envisions decentralization transforming fields like healthcare by securely unlocking data to power personalized medicine and saving lives. We'll be talking with Adam about how more traditional businesses like banks, insurance companies, and of course, healthcare firms are making the transition from traditional web interactions and customer interactions to leveraging the power of Web3. So I'm super happy you're here, Adam. Welcome.
Hi. So nice to be here. I'm excited for this.
I am too. So I'm sure I missed a bunch in the intro, even though it covered a bunch of things. You're a busy guy. Tell us a little bit about what you're involved in right now.
Sure. Yeah. So I recently transitioned out of the CEO role of MadHive, which originally started when I was looking for a big market, and advertising is a big one. I took the bet that every television advertisement at some point will be delivered over IP, which the pandemic really sped that up, which was good for MadHive. And our customers are very legacy broadcast customers, right? So companies like Fox and other that broadcast over the airwaves, and you pick up your antenna and all the local news, all that kind of stuff. As customers are transitioning to a new technology, those sales teams that are selling ad spots, they're losing reach. And so how do you give those sales teams access to the inventory where those customers are going? And so we built a platform that does that. I've been in Bitcoin since first year, and it took me years to really understand what this new database technology actually does and what it's good for and not good for. And the idea was like, hey, like there's all these problems in advertising that are about, because advertising itself is decentralized in nature, right? You have all these brands, you have all the television companies, you have all the media, everything is separate. Google tries to aggregate it all into one. But if all the media companies gave Google their ad inventory, Google's now their boss, right? So they're not going to do that. They're not going to put it all in one place. And in this decentralized mix of exchanges, there's a lot of fraud that happens, and people inject fake ads and audience and lie and blah, blah, blah. And the idea is that, can we clean that up with crypto and things like that? And the answer is, it sounds really good in theory, but when you have an 80-year-old legacy business with thousands of people making money and this and that, changing the way something works fundamentally is probably a 20-year process, not because of tech, but because of humans. And people have families, they have lives, and like disrupting that takes a lot of time. While MadHive uses a couple of crypto things internally to use the Bitcoin ID generation system and things like that, there's really no crypto in MadHive anymore. But the core tech that we built there for identity provenance, which is in use in Verizon today. So if you go on Verizon's website, you look at any publication that's there, there'll be a little box called full transparency, which basically if someone misquotes them, you can go and prove that they said or didn't say something, things like that. It's a very kind of really interesting use case, especially today with fake news and things like that. But what really is happening there is that we're hashing stuff and basically securing what they say and all the updates they say, and through this algorithm, so that Verizon can have proof if they said something or not. If they delete something, they'll stand by what they did delete and things like that. What industries like MadHive that are huge and decentralized in nature, where product development is bigger than keeping everything the same, like ad tech. So healthcare is a good example, because saving lives is important. And whoever comes up with new drugs or figures out new things first, things like that, can I speed up FDA approval, stuff like that, it becomes a really big business driver to basically secure identity at the root. And that so we can have competition, two major pharma companies working together, and then they can audit to make sure that we're not, or someone's not tipping the scales without hiring an E&Y and doing a 6-month, $5 million investigation. Yeah. And that's where we are.
So let's start with some of the real basics then to get back to the conversation related to how you're using this stuff. What do you mean by federated data or federated data exchange? So I know that's key to some of the stuff that you're doing.
It's key in the context, just like I said before, is that the vision of the future that, that we see and that we think is going to happen, and this is our bet and our investors' bets, is that more and more data will be online. And you're starting to see, and then now with this beginning of the AI kind of revolution, it's important. Good training data is important for these things to become much more useful to you individually, to anyone listening. Like these tools will be in there, and also to major companies to make better decisions faster. There's the old Silicon Valley adage that he who iterates fastest generally wins. And so more data allows you to iterate faster, more precision data, more accurate precision data allows you to do that. And so how do you get all this data online? So there's two problems. One is some of these companies, like a MadHive, for example, that generates a petabyte of data a day, it can't send that data to a centralized platform to be like monetized or understood or ingested by an LLM. It's just the egress and ingress costs at Amazon will be like, it's just not worth it, right? And the time it would take more to get it there, right? And then there's on the personal side and healthcare, you have the HIPAA and all that kind of stuff. But then there's like the idea just of your own self. Like there's a problem called like the nude selfie problem. If I'm like sitting next to you and I show you my phone and it's like a naked picture of something, you saw it, but you don't have it. And I can and that's that. But if I text you that picture and I say, please don't use it, just look at it, I have no way to take it back from you. And so if there's a future where the default will be to share data, everything in a privacy compliant, like where answers are given in the context of metadata, make all your data available to share, whether it's consumer level or company level. But there's an abstraction layer in the middle that has this blockchain public mainnet auditability thing behind the scenes to prove what you're doing. And then I can give kind of metadata answers contextualized to the question being asked, right, by like a data consumer. Whether it's like a MadHive, we might want to say, hey, I want better lifetime value data for product Y. And if a whole bunch of data was online, a little LLM AI agent could go out there and start modeling out queries against all these private data sets and figure out which ones are valuable training data to give the right result. And so when we say federated, we just, in order to do that at scale, whether if there's like a consumer-based healthcare app, or whether it's a big, like a LinkedIn kind of company or other kind of stuff, they would essentially be running this like agent locally that would allow them to run these queries against this data set, report back the metadata to see if there's any value there, and a business deal can get struck up. So if it's the first time, those people can then simply create a business deal with, say, and this also allows the contribution value to be understood. So the real thing that we're working on is this ability to have contextualized contribution value based on the question being asked of the data, and which allows the trading of enterprise value of the product being developed. Say it's a new drug at Pfizer, and they need these people with these genes and other facets about their healthcare record, that 24 hospitals have those people. Now those hospitals can receive economic benefit that is like worthwhile. If Pfizer's going to make $10 billion on that drug, those 29 people that it found might be worth $500 million. And so that won't happen. All these hospitals aren't going to install and upload all their data hoping that would happen one day. And there's also no way to prove that it was them that did that. So the federated model allows questions to go out to a network, ask, get it all come back together and hit go. And that's just really the future. It's not, no one's going to upload all that stuff into Snowflake and just cross their fingers and hope.
So you bring up a couple different questions then with federated data. So you talk about the hospitals and the data they may contain, and the folks who, like the drug companies, who would find value in locating those kind of folks. Getting that transaction to even occur means that the holders of that data would have to want to participate in that. And the data that belongs to the individuals then would also have to have some kind of permission attached to it. Isn't that right?
Possibly. In all at the end of the day, the TOS that we sign on every single website and every single app already usually gives the company access to do whatever they want with the data that's generated on their app, right? And so that's fine there. But again, we're not giving, just like that nude selfie problem, we're not giving people that are asking the questions. They're not running it locally on their machine. It's running in this FedML platform and reporting back, hey, if you connect this data set, your answer will be 40% more accurate. And there's this abstraction layer in the middle. And we're not really talking about consumer use cases here. We're talking more like a B2B2C, right? And so really is that I get the metadata insights about the data sets that would give me a better result for my product development. And then in V1 of our product, like our AI system, like when it finds people that want to do that, it literally, a ticket gets generated in our like ticketing system to have a human facilitate that deal. And it's that straightforward. And until we figure out how this would be automated, nothing like this would be automated quite yet, and probably shouldn't be for privacy reasons and things like that. And there's a lot of value there that needs to be negotiated.
So it sounds like you get a little bit of a taste test before you actually go buy your Costco 50 pack, right? So you're actually able to see whether or not this is going to work for you at all, or if it would add value to you before you actually do the investment in whatever that is. So how would traditional legacy businesses, again, thinking back to banking and insurance, these healthcare firms, how should they be thinking about this data, is federated data, as well as blockchain within their current environments right now?
Yeah, good question. I've thought about, I know advertising really well, and I know healthcare really well because a good friend of mine's company is in genetics and works with a lot of companies there. And I've started learning insurance a little bit and a couple other things. If there's enough data out there that basically can help an insurance company understand their actuary tables better, things like that, and you can improve their business by 0.1%, that's huge. And so if the modeling, that abstraction layer says, hey, connect all these data sets, you'll have a 0.1% like improvement in these results here, then it's up to the insurance company to decide if it's worth pursuing that 0.1%. And to an insurance company, that's probably is, because that's probably over $1 billion. So, and we let them decide how that can work in that sense there. Fintech, there's also similar things. If it's algorithmic trading, things like that, can I include the Sharpe ratio of an algorithm with more data here? Let's model that out and back test it, things like that. And then our agents out there can go simulate that and then provide instructions back. So it's not so much, we do not lead with blockchain at all. It's not just like a Mad Hive, I don't go into a sales room and tell people about the magic of what the products inside a Google Cloud. I don't say. It's an infrastructure that I chose very specifically for a problem that's just starting to rear its head, but at massive scale, to audit the precisionness of this data and is it real? Did it actually come from this place and things like that? That will become important, especially in life or death situations like healthcare and things like that. And if you're at a hospital and you're looking for treatment of someone that's going to die in 4 hours, and there's a hospital somewhere in France that figured that out and figured out what happened, and you have this question there, before you want to be absolutely certain that there's not like a fake hospital out there in this federated model trying to monetize the network. And so we use blockchain simply a public mainnet as a certificate authority, as like the root of truth. And there's still obviously what you put on a blockchain. It's funny that we're like over 10 years in and people still don't quite get this, but the blockchain isn't truth. The blockchain is just what you put on it stays the same. And so we're building out standards bodies and things like that about like, how can you be certain that this is that thing? And it's the same as if you went on Amazon's website and you click the SSL key and it said a whole bunch of bizarre junk on it, you might not want to put your credit card number in there. And so same idea.
Again, blockchain being just the technology enabler that you've selected. Yeah. And again, you mentioned it has specific characteristics that other data technologies don't.
You need to hire an Ernst & Young to go and figure that all out for you. Probably take 9 months to a year and a half and $5 million later. But meanwhile, that kid died.
So how would you advise healthcare companies looking at this type of federated data issue or the capabilities that are brought in via blockchain to move forward to get the advantages of that? Because you're taking, again,
So
some of these legacy, these firms are not necessarily jumping towards this stuff, but if you see the benefits behind it, how would you
yeah,
bring them that way?
I talk about what we just talked about in the last question, right? I don't, and our customers aren't, we're, Valence is we're a marketplace enabler, right? For existing data marketplaces that like companies, the major healthcare companies use to do things with, whether it's drug companies or whether it's a patient advocacy group looking for things like that. There's ones like Michael J. Fox Foundation and things like that that have a ton of data on their patients and are looking to contextualize that with other stuff. It's a very manual process and things like that. And so essentially the companies that they're already working with are our customers. And we say, Valentify your data and get access to other networks of data as well to get better answers to questions. And if you want to think about it, I don't know how, basically there's a ton of, in the crypto exchange world, a lot of the smaller exchanges all trade liquidity with each other behind the scenes, right? If I have a buy order of 10,000 ETH and there's no one selling that buy might get subbed out to some other network somewhere else behind the scenes, and you don't really know that. And that's what we're doing with these data marketplaces as well, is being that routing engine for data that is there. And so our mission is to increase we want to surface more coincidence of things actually happening for you. And we believe that the core blockchain tech allows that to happen at scale fast because you can trust it. I'll tell you now that no one actually cares there because it's not happening, but we believe it's future-proofing the system. And also no one really cares because nothing's happening at the scale where they would need to care. And for just like Bitcoin needs to get 500x bigger if it's actually going to replace gold and blah, blah, blah. It has all this potential, everything that we're using today, but it's not there yet for every day because and that's what we're all waiting for and what podcasts like this are about and things like that. Let's tell that story and get it to be more known so that people adopt it because it's just better for everybody than the current model. Saves time, energy, things like that. That's where we are. And we believe that if we have this in there now and we just start, hey, and you can and by the way, all the data, if you want to really understand the provenance that it really is this hospital and this is the vetting process, things like that, click here and you can see the whole thing. And most people are like, oh, that's cool, but they're not really thinking about that. But I guarantee you when they start transacting 3% of enterprise value of their $1 billion drug, they will care. And that's that.
So you bring up another point that you touched on it earlier, but you brought it up again now, this whole concept of identity validation. When we start looking at the obvious capabilities that Gen AI has for creating very convincing images,
Sure,
convincing sounding audio clips and whatnot, how does that fit in with this type of approach?
Yeah, it's stuff that we've been looking at for a while ago in the context of Valence that could be done. We're not going to go after that, but someone using our platform can. Essentially, because a lot has to happen. And so one is the source needs to be able to have a private key in it that's attached to a public mainnet. The source is a camera. That camera needs to have a key and then needs to basically make an encrypted hash of the raw data file and store that in a system to be looked up next to the same way that we're doing it with Verizon. And so that, hey, here's this yesterday I saw there was an image of an AI generated image of Taylor Swift enjoying an ice cream with her private jet behind the scene in Africa with a bunch of starving Africans around her, and it created outrage. And people didn't get that was, and that's just an extreme example. And if people are fooled by that, then we're in for some hurt coming up in the next decade. And that image wouldn't have a key that was produced by a camera that was produced by Fuji that someone can validate that this really is Fuji that produced this thing. And now what you might find, oh, here's the source image that someone's jamming this private key into. And that was just Taylor Swift eating an ice cream cone on the beach or not at all because AI made the whole thing. I think this image had her right hand all messed up the way that Dolly and stuff like that do stuff, but it's, and that's, so basically one of the companies one of our partners is working with genetic genome sequencing, right? And so they have private keys when they run your blood, and that machine number XYZ and a serial number blah 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 has some encryption in it, and then Valence is getting that record with the private key, and we can prove that this gene this whole genome was mapped by this machine, made by this company at this time, and it also has the same thing for the blood that was used, blah, 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 the whole thing. And so now when you're looking for rare disease candidates, and it's almost like the reverse, we need precision search, unlike back rub, the way Google works. It's almost like where lowest hanging stuff goes to the bottom. We actually want to surface the most scarce stuff to the top, because that's actually what people are looking for. And so we use a different algorithm to do that kind of stuff. But basically, you want to, it all needs to be contextualized in that way there. And it all needs to go back to, hey, there's a green check mark here because all the data's at this level of security. And maybe we'll let in crappy data or that's unvalidated data, like ad tech data from MadHive. Yeah, MadHive approved it. It went through MadHive system, but we have no way to prove downstream in the MadHive system where it got the data from. And so that might be a different color. That's the stuff we're working on now, is like the confidence levels of scoring here. And then what is the product development needs of the company, the data buyer? They actually need that ultra high fidelity, or can they would they rather, it doesn't really matter that much in the context of what they're doing.
As you see this, again, you're talking about images and image data and whatnot. Do you foresee that, say, reputable news outlets or news outlets that have a reputation that they would want to protect would have the same type of key type of thing where they would mark this as the data that actually came out of their photographers?
I think that's a really important business. And we looked at that originally, maybe 6 months to a year ago. And we actually started going down that route a little bit. It's for us, it's not a big enough business to push this technology idea out. We hope that someone does it, or maybe one of our employees leaves and does it using our tech. But it's a little niche and a little early. It doesn't sound like it's early, but the amount of things that have to happen for that to work are hard, right? And one of my good friends, actually the founder of Block Demon, I don't know if you've ever had him on the podcast, Constantine, he has a saying that I always think about when he's starting a new business, is that if the business needs more than 2 miracles to happen, he probably shouldn't invest in it. And that business would need a few miracles, which is like, how do I create an encryption standard that will be inside the chipset of every single consumer camera that exists? And things like that. That's a pretty big one. And then how do you get the world to care about it enough? So, and I think you can get the second one, but it'll be at MadHive, we worked with a lot of the television manufacturers, and in Korea, they do the software, and Japan, they do the hardware. If you want to put a new word on the screen, it's a 3-year process. I can't imagine getting Sony to do this. Yes, they would say, cool. And the CEO would be like, let's do it. But production wise and getting that out, yeah, it's just, we're probably a decade away.
So would you foresee something, rather than going at the hardware level, to at least go to an entity level to provide that level of trust? So let's say here in the States, ABC News, or maybe in UK, BBC, have their they can feed that way.
And you trust that. Yeah, 100%. So that's where we were going, is, okay, where can you trust, do you trust the New York Times? And the problem in this country, with the division that's been happening, is that half this country doesn't trust the New York Times. Yeah, they would probably do it, but does that actually matter to a degree of solving? I guess it would help a little bit, because maybe the opposite of New York Times wouldn't buy this technology because they actually aren't doing things that are legitimate. But, and yeah, 100%, it can go at the entity level and start working your way up from there. And that would be a really great thing to see.
So it really sounds like this is a broader issue that has come to the forefront because of not only the ease of being able to generate an AI image, but the fidelity of those images or sound bites or videos that can be created.
It's happening so fast.
It is.
Yeah. I think upload and have me say completely different things,
So but that idea of trust, though, going back to that, you mentioned the blockchain is just an infrastructure technology that helps you to validate that what is there is supposed to be there and hasn't changed. How can the infrastructure or the technologies that are currently available help to foster that trust, not just from a data transfer perspective that you were mentioning earlier, but more along the lines of taking the same technology to foster a different level of trust in general? As you talked about, we've learned to trust SSL certificates in our web browsers because, and till we understand, we go to here, we can check it out if we want to. We see that it's what we'd expect to see from Amazon or whatnot, and we proceed with our transactions. How could you see something like the technology that's available now, or maybe something that has to happen in the future to change it, would foster the same level of trust for all of the media that is being generated, which may or may not be valid?
Tactically, I think it's the same strategy that the Web3 organization did with the key and with the little lock in our browsers. Socially, I think it's a much bigger problem because one, everyone is aligned to not get ripped off. Like there's no one arguing that I don't want to use SSL. There's no one arguing that they don't want their credit card information like transmitted plain text over the web. No, people are 100% in agreement with that. I believe it would be really strange to talk to someone that wasn't. Creating a trust model where you say the source of this data and you can then track the hops that it went through down the pipe. You can then go check the source and go look at their key and look at how it was filled out and blah, blah, blah. That can all happen. And I bet you could probably lobby Web3 org to put that in the not Web3, but the W3C that does the browser standard stuff. You can get them to probably put this trust checkbox, blue check mark kind of thing inside it and have it be part of the HTTP at some point. I think we get back to the issue of trust of the organizations themselves. And will everyone trust the little thing I'm looking at right now, the little lock in my browser? But if I don't trust half the news organizations out there and all the news organizations have this blue check mark or whatever on it, I'm not going to trust the blue check mark because I don't trust it. And I might have an irrational reason for not trusting it or a very valid one. And so that's why I was talking about, you can't argue with the source data being a piece of computer hardware, like a camera and things like that, because that is what it is. But you can argue with a human being. And so getting that adopted, even if it was there, I think at the consumer level, I think you have the problem is that everyone that reads the New York Times already trusts it. And so they don't really need it so much. And it's not going to prove anyone, it's not going to that new thing isn't going to change anyone's mind, So I think that's the problem. I lost your audio.
Sorry, it gets back to that same discussion you had earlier with blockchain. It isn't truth. It's just the validation that what was put there hasn't been altered. So
That's
taking the same step within, say, the New York Times, if I don't trust the New York Times, I see the blue check mark. I'm not going to, dismiss the fact that it came from them because it says that it did, and I would trust that thing. I agree with whatever they've sent out there, but at least I know what was put out there was valid from their organizational perspective. Yeah. So you get back to that kind of the concept of trusting somebody or some entity to be able to put out that material that they're looking at.
It might help like a meme. Like if a meme went out there that falsified what New York Times said, and that goes back to what we're doing with Verizon.
Right.
Then now theoretically Twitter can now have an automatic process that says, hey, this says New York Times, did they actually say this? And they could put a notice there. And maybe that would be valid there. I don't know how you would make money from that service, but it should be built. I agree.
Yeah, again, going beyond the commercial aspects of this, just the technological and the sort of the need behind it, because then you take into account the sort of antithesis of that, which is right now we're saying we're looking to the BBC to produce authentic, trustworthy materials. We look at our governments and they may choose to produce trustworthy materials. They may also choose to produce materials that they would like to have their own narrative on based on whatever their discussions are. Someone would call that propaganda. And it's not just the U.S. government, maybe every government has that ability to transform what they believe is trustworthy and create that. So at least it came from a specific source, but in terms of its trustworthiness, now you have to go back to the actual entity itself.
Did this actually happen? Did the New York Times or the BBC actually produce this thing that could be validated in real time? And that's what we'd really want, is for that reason. Yeah, my initial premise I was arguing against before was like, am I now going to trust the New York Times photos? No, but if I see a meme that shows something that horrifies me, and then there's like a big notice that says New York Times never did this, then maybe that would help me start trusting New York Times again. But that would be helpful. Yeah.
Gotcha. So getting back to some of this stuff, what excites you the most about the evolution of all this technology? Where do you see that taking hold in some of these traditional business models?
Yeah, good question. What I really like doing as an entrepreneur, like the art of it for me, is that I like to really understand a business process or just things that people do. And then using technology in an innovative way, can we change that, produce better opportunity, and bring people closer together in certain ways while still maintaining the sanctity of what the original context was? And so a really simple example from my first company that I'm still have some pride around because it's still in use is that I built a company called eCamp for photo news and email for summer camps. Really small market, 900 camps. I was like 20. And so at summer camp, the point of summer camp is to create like a coming of age experience for a child in a controlled environment. And so you go to camp, you sleep away. It's like your first year of college, but you're like 12. And so interesting things are going to happen for that kid. And the reason for that is because I'm away from home. I don't have immediate contact to my family and loved ones. So I have to like learn how to be on my own. Your phones are taken away, things like that. But how do you allow a parent to stay in touch with their child during that month and have some sort of feedback loop that doesn't interrupt? So the one thing that was available at the time were postal letters home, and that would take 2 to 5 days. And what we came up with originally were these, we made our own Hotmail-y kind of service, 1999. And we put these computer networks in camps that would dial up to the internet at 3 a.m. every night and had local mail servers. And then I had the SMTP server on the other side, and they would talk and they would dump all the mail and receive all the mail, and the kids can get mail once a day and over email. And then we transitioned that product out to a similar one where every kid got an email address. And then we had the software that would then take all that email over SMTP and then put it all in a database and then create a PDF file sorted by bunk. And then on the back of every page was a barcode. And now the kid can write a letter. And then the camp would then take that stack and fax it to a number. And then we would JPEG all those images and email it back to the parent. And they use this thing. And I thought that, and that's really cool. I really enjoyed doing that. It's a pretty, and because we were able to maintain the same concept that the camp directors wanted. They're like, internet in our camp? No, it'll ruin it. And I'm like, no, wait, think about it like this. And they're like, oh, that's super cool. I could probably get more campers that way. And so that was a lot of fun. And that same product is still in use today. And that's what we're doing here. If the future is federated data for all the stuff we talked about, in order to deliver tomorrow's very precision products, you need very precise data. And that is just not available today. And there's the great demand for it. And there's a huge bounty for that data because there's huge competition in tomorrow's products that require this high fidelity. And exchanging enterprise value for that data to produce those products, I think is the future. And I think it's basically, hey, install this SDK into your app or whatever it is, and we'll write you a check every month. And everything's protected. You're in this like firewall thing. You can validate that because it's all in the public mainnet, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff there. It's very straightforward and simple. And now it's just, and we're starting to see just now the demand for this. There's also like regulatory stuff happening where in US and Canada, people are companies are being mandated to share data, and there's no systems to do that well yet. So we fit in there, things like that.
So I'm going to shake it up here for our last question. Who's the most influential person in your life and how have they impacted you?
Oh, wow. Most influential person in my life that's impacted. Yeah, it changes in a lot of ways. I'd say right now it's probably my business partner who's now CEO of MadHive, who took over for me right now. We met about maybe 7-8 years ago. We're like completely different in how we approach the world in like a perfect way and he really respects like my product vision and the way I like decision making and things like that. And he's a really good people person and executor and just super smart and intelligent. And he helped me gain the confidence in my instinct and making things really big because of his blind faith in my core vision and then his ability to execute that stuff in a big team. And then together we turned MadHive from like a 20 million top line revenue to the multi hundreds by both learning how to have faith in each other's ability to execute what we're good at and stop doing what we're bad at. And that's that concept has helped me with my friends, my kids, and everybody else. And then on the very personal side, it's my daughter and son that really keep me fresh. But yeah,
Kids will do that to you.
Yeah,
that is for sure. It was really good talking with you today. I found so much interesting thing that we went off script in terms of where I was going with this, but I think the conversation was very interesting in terms of how you're relating the blockchain and some of these trust issues back in towards some of the real challenges businesses are facing now and some of the opportunities they have in the future for being able to leverage that data that they have for a new commercial purpose, but also allowing them to see other data that they can leverage for their own commercial purposes in a very safe way. Thank you so much for bringing this all out. I really appreciate your views and your context in this.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was really fun. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how SS&C Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.